Ever since people learned about the Rings of Power coming out, people were on the fences like an MMA fight. And as the time for its release approached and we learned more about it, the more we braced for the impact like Russian slap fighting. Details illuminated that the creators had less experience than a nun frozen in carbonite, and the show was going to be about as faithful to its source material as the long-forgotten Aragon. The Rings of Power is like a new prison inmate juggling bars of soap. We knew they were going to give it a try, we just didn't know how many bars were going to be attempted, and now that we're 5 episodes in, I can confidently say the resulting failure of juggling too much soap would melt most people away like they peered inside the Ark of the Covenant. So bear with me as I relay to you the horrors I have witnessed, and strap in, because the summary alone is gonna be a long one. Before I do, please subscribe to join my kingdom to not miss a new video. First, we open with the Harfoot pilgrimage well underway, and more confusing than Common Core math. Seriously, I would love to hear someone's defense of this path because it looks like the pull-down map from the Emperor's New Groove, and somehow more stupid. Anyway, more of the Harfoot demand that Sadok just leave Nori's family behind, because as I've said before, these people are nuts. Then Nori, Poppy, and the Harfoot who wants them to die are all chased by wolves. And just before they are eaten, the stranger ruins the episode by saving them by slamming the ground, causing a shockwave that repels the wolves. This results in his arm bruising for some reason. Then the stranger sticks his arm in water and starts muttering some sort of spell, which freezes his arm like he's trying to cosplay the T-1000. Nori, understandably concerned for the stranger, grabs onto his arm to get his attention, but she starts to freeze as well, and just as the spell is completed, the ice shatters, sending Nori flying backwards. The stranger somehow didn't notice she was there, and when he tries to comfort his friend, she runs off, scared, back to the caravan. Moving on, we are finally introduced to Eminem in a dress, who does fuck all. Alright, next we have baby mama Bronwyn and Don Lemonless Arendir discussing what to do in the wake of Adar's offer. The pair brings up the proposition to the people staying in Osteriath, who, I shit you not, are fucking copy-pasted. $1 billion hard at work, everyone. Anyway, the Control-V crowd listen to what Bronwyn has to say, and they decide, yeah, we believe you. Then the Sauron supporter speaks up and says, how about we just bend the knee to Adar? And the people are like, you know what? Yeah, we're with him now, because apparently everyone in the Southlands has sustained themselves on a steady diet of depleted uranium and lead paint. Then Arendir speaks up, and instead of a response, everyone just looks at him confused like Bart riding into Rock Ridge. So everyone whose hamsters died but their wheels are still spinning decide to join Waldreg to pledge fealty to Adar, who, to absolutely no one's surprise, isn't Sauron. Which doesn't draw curiosity from any of the orcs who believe him to be? Well, whatever, no time to ponder that, as Adar orders the orcs to march on Osteriath for the next episode. Back in the Watchtower, Arendir's son, I mean the kid whose dad totally left for milk and never came back, wink wink, tells his dad, who totally never left, I mean Arendir, about the Morgul blade. Then it is revealed that Arendir has seen this before, and he walks like 5 feet over and removes the petroleum-based product out of the way, and we see what looks like the Dragon Wall from Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, complete with, you guessed it, someone using the Morgul blade for some sort of sacrifice. Well, according to the Fresh Prince of Noldor, it is in fact a key. For what? I have no idea, but knowing these morons, it will probably be something like turning on Mount Doom like a car. We next join up with Elrond and Durin having dinner with Gil-galad in celebration of the dwarves and elves finally getting along. It starts out not too bad until Gil-galad becomes a nosy neighbor and starts asking about what the dwarves are doing in the privacy of their own homes now that the great furnaces have begun to smoke once again. To which, Durin the dim-witted counters with how the stone table they're eating at is extremely rare and only used for burials of the highest honor and should be returned to the dwarves. This shocked me as much as Gil-galad, who shuts up, and the dinner concludes shortly after, followed by Elrond the Four-Headed having a talk with Gil-galad the Double-Chinned, who reveals the elves will lose their immortality if the enemy isn't defeated. Yeah, I know, it makes about as much sense as Arwen's life being intrinsically connected to the fate of the One Ring. This is relayed by showing that the big white tree in the courtyard is being reverse Michael Jacksoned by some sort of cancerous growth. Gil-galad also divulges 2 other things. First, the reason as to why he sent away Galadriel is because she needed mental help for her obsession, believing that she was chasing her own tail. And second, that he knows the dwarves probably already have Mithril, and repeatedly asks Elrond to confirm this. However, like a witness testifying against the Mafia, Elrond doesn't confirm they do, but he also doesn't deny it either, as he repeatedly says, "I made a promise." So Elrond's over here sounding like he took advice from Jussie Smollett's lawyer before Gil-galad walks away and Elrond just pulls out the fucking mithril to look at it in plain view of anyone who might be keeping watch over the High King of the Elves. Then he has a talk with Grandpa Brimbor, admitting that he knows about the mithril already and discloses further that the whole reason Elrond was sent to Khazad-dûm in the first place was to confirm that the dwarves did in fact have mithril, because Gil-galad and Celebrimbor want to use it to arm the elves for the coming fight. Again, I'm as surprised as the character, because when the fuck did Lord of the Rings become a cheap YA knockoff of Game of Thrones? Anyway, the next morning, before Durin the Dim-Witted departs for Khazad-dûm with the table in tow, he and Elrond have a talk, starting with, Durin lied about the purpose of the stone because Disa's been wanting a new table. And you know what? Good job. I like that. You're no longer Durin the Dim-Witted. You're just dim. Then he steps on a rock so plastic it echoes, and Elrond relays the events of last night's talks before setting off back to Khazad-dûm. Last but not least, we return to Numenor in the midst of preparation for the expedition force's departure to Middle-earth, and not everyone is as unified as was shown. Numenor is split on this decision by Queen Miriel, with half standing by her choice, while the other half think that sending their sons and daughters to fight in some foreign land that has little to nothing to do with them is stupid. Even Pharazôn's own son, Kemen, is one such person, and he sees no positives to come from this move, to which Pharazôn explains it is good because of the resources and wealth from the resulting trades established with Middle-earth would bolster Numenor tenfold. So, Kemen's alright with this. Okay. Meanwhile, Isildur begs his father to let him join the expedition, because this time he'll be a good boy. And Elendil probably has the best response, to paraphrase, "Why would I trust you to do this when you couldn't do anything else?" You know what? Good on you, Elendil. You're a bro. This doesn't stop Isildur, who tries to convince his friends to sneak him in like a 16-year-old trying to convince a bouncer to let her into a nightclub. And once again, he is denied because he's an untrustworthy prick, and this is the longest stretch of decent writing the show has probably ever had. Well, if at once you don't succeed, try again, I suppose, so we'll come back to him in just a moment. Now we come to Galadriel, who continues to manipulate everyone into believing that Sauron has weapons of mass destruction. She keeps putting words into everyone's mouths, even right in front of them, like Halbrand, who is obviously against going back, and despite the very clear disagreement in front of her, Queen Miriel decides to continue preparations. So Halbrand walks away pissed off that Karen Hurd here is going to get away with shitting the bed, and she goes off on a stroll through Numenor, coming across a bunch of new recruits training. And in the infinite wisdom bestowed upon her by her late great-brother, what's-his-nuts, Galadriel says there are many ways to kill an orc, and she teaches these kids how to stab them. Weird, I never would have thought that would work. I figured these recruits were going to use harsh language. No shit, you retard! Are your great-great descendants the Kardashians? Anyway, Karen Sue decides to big dick all over these kids, believing she won't be scratched, and what occurs is some of the worst fight choreography I've seen since Captain Kirk threw hands with the Gorn. And believe me, we'll discuss that shit later. Moving on, Galadriel later meets up with Halbrand, and the two get into an argument. Halbrand is obviously pissed off that he's being used like this is a high school relationship and is about to reveal what he did to end up on the ship. Then Karen Driel fucking breaks down and says that she's always been the victim because her brother died, and she thinks the only reason she was sent away was because her friends and other elves couldn't, quote, tell the difference between me and the enemy. Wow, that was earth-shattering. I never would have realized that after you threatened the entire royalty of Numenor to get what you want and were willing to even leave a man behind. Oh yeah, who would have guessed? And finally, she reveals to us the very reason she's fighting as well. The reason for all of these millennia of struggle, strife, and woe. It is because she cannot stop. Yep, that's it. Galadriel cannot stop. Modern-day writing, everyone. The so-called strong female character is nothing more than a revenge-obsessed, bloodthirsty psychopath. So, for the women watching this, do you feel represented yet? Around the same time this conversation concludes, Pharazon's son Kemen has taken a boat out to one of the ships destined for Middle-earth, and he sabotages it by striking open kegs of wine, and lo and behold, Isildur is already stowing away. So the two of them scuffle, and the wine is ignited, which causes the ship to fucking explode like the Death Star. And miraculously, these two college rejects survive and swim back to the dock where Elendil the Bro questions Isildur about what just happened. So Isildur lies to Elendil, saying Kemen was just out fishing, so he swam out there to save his life. And then Elendil fucking believes him! That's it! Elendil, you have officially been unbroed. 2 of the ships have been destroyed, resources burned, weapons and armor sunk, and in the wake of the major setback, Queen Muriel decides, this ain't shit, and the next morning the fleet sets sail for Middle-earth. All 3 of them. But hey, totally not Sauron and Gal Palpatine made up. Yay. That was a lot to go over, so let's discuss. First and foremost, one of the nice things about the original series is it was so simple even a caveman could understand it. Morgoth and his followers are bad while everyone else is good, and until this episode, the show more or less actually understood that. However, what was once light and dark is now trying to blur into a gray mess, sort of like the NPCs that defend this shit. Now everyone has an agenda, like it's the European Union. Gil-galad sent Elrond to unknowingly spy on the dwarves because there's this forced drama of the elves losing their immortality or some shit. Pharazon plays along with the expedition because he wants to bolster Numenor economically and possibly make the elves listen to the Númenóreans? And of course Galadriel, who has managed to manipulate a queen to just give her an army. It really does circle back to the forced drama I've stated multiple times before. It's all political drama, so the show could pretend to be in the same territory as House of Cards or Game of Thrones, but it will never be accepted as such. It's like saying that your 2 hot yoga classes qualify you to be a mixed martial artist. A glaring issue about this episode in particular is how bloated this one is. All the prior episodes pushed their limits, and I stated one before felt like Rosie O'Donnell, but this one, it's like they took the liposuction fat from Adele and stuffed it in here. Case in point, what the fuck are the Harfoot doing? What is their purpose? I don't have a fucking clue, and I don't think the writers do either, and I've pondered this harder than Friedrich Nietzsche groomed his mustache. They have no reason to be here. Nothing being learned, no progress being made, and they only serve as a reminder that Totally Not Gandalf is still around. If they were removed entirely from this episode, as well as the show as a whole, more time could be spent on other locations that at least have more going on. But even that idea is scrapped when Numenor alone should be taken up about half the episode, but much of the genuine conflict, like the people's division of Queen Muriel's decision, is glossed over in favor of the far less interesting crap like Isildur the Airheaded or Kemen the Cumstain. And talk about spontaneous human retardation with Elendil starting off with some consistent writing, denying Isildur, then blindly accepting his son's bullshit excuse like a false rape accusation. You're going to believe Sonny Boy over here was just standing on the dock at night watching Kemen on a fishing boat trying to bring dinner for dear old dad who looks like he skips meals about as often as Arnold does the gym? And when the ship explodes like the port of Beirut, not only was Kemen not immediately vaporized, Isildur also knew exactly where he was and swam all the way out there and brought him back? How would Isildur have known where Kemen was? It's night! I don't think you could have magnified a floodlight through Nerdrotic's glasses to see him from that distance, but you're going to believe your son has the eyes of an elf? Fuck you, and fuck Gil-galad too. Dude's over here playing 4D chess with Elrond as a pawn to confirm the discovery of Mithril so he can arm his people instead of, I don't know, opening trade, easing tensions, building relations. Or how about inquiring if the dwarves have any odd goings-on, similar to the tree in Eregion, and if there is, then maybe there's something wrong, and you could, I don't know, maybe form an alliance? I don't know, something like that. I just don't understand why I have to be punished for thinking. Here, let's rewind this like Wild Things. Why is Kemen trying to sabotage the expedition? I swear I just watched your dad convince you of the long-term benefits to this expedition in your last scene, but now you're pretending to be Guy Fawkes? This is why the moniker I've given Kemen fits, because the smartest part of him rolled down his mother's leg. And so many characters are just rewarded when they do something that they should be punished for. I would be shocked if Kemen is actually in prison next episode. Meanwhile, Isildur has failed out of his sea trials, and even though he saved saved Kemen, he is also blatantly lying to his father, but that doesn't matter because now he's on board in armor, and that looks like it came from a thrift shop. Halbrand was in prison the last episode for theft, assault, and probably attempted murder for less time than SpongeBob and Patrick when they stole a balloon, and yet he's out of prison and already an approved blacksmith by the guild? The dude's nose must be browner than dark walnut wood stain. And then, of course, again, there's Galadriel, who has caused more problems for this show than Dr. Yue betraying the Atreides. She finally admits her reason for fighting while blaming everyone else for her problems. Bitch, you just said you resented Gil-galad and others because you think they couldn't differentiate you from the enemy, yet you've basically admitted you're a psychopath. Your reasoning is no different than the trio of killers in The Strangers. They didn't send you away because they didn't want you around anymore. They sent you away so you could get help. And no, not the Ponzi scheme Philip DeFranco peddled to line his own pockets. I mean real, genuine help from the Valar themselves. You smile ear to ear only when riding horses and fighting what amounts to high school students. You've been alive for several millennia, and it never once crossed your mind to think any of this through. And speaking of high school students, it is time to go over that fight scene. I'll discuss it as I show it. She starts off with 2 swords in hand, like Lloyd Irving, because 2 swords means double the damage. Everyone's attacks are so telegraphed that Helen Keller would see them coming. Then she swings her swords to throw this guy off balance, but he's already cowering, waiting for Rey Palpatine over here because she missed her mark. Then she shunts this guy, and this actress has the fucking kill shot, but has to wait because immediately Galadriel the plot armored missed another cue. Then this guy just off camera she doesn't know is coming and has another kill shot, but fucking waits because the action is too slow. Then she just manages to turn around and avoid knocking this actor's teeth out, and while she has a sword to these 2, the other 3 just fucking stand there? Run her through! Sever her spine and throw her to the sharks because I deserve something today. Then we cut to only 3 people thrusting their swords at her even though she's standing at attention. And what the fuck was this actress doing? Looking for loose change? She even rushes up and instead of piercing Galadriel, she stabs the pillar. So they end up getting blocked and Galadriel goes and swings vertically and this girl is like, please, no, not like this, as she looks away. Then this hanging net that couldn't catch a cold falls on both of these actors and they're trapped. Trapped, I tell you. And what the fuck is this guy doing in the background? Is he sneezing? Did he fall headfirst into a keg of pepper? You want to know the worst part? This isn't even the whole clip. Some hero without a cape posted this, and it doesn't even show how Galadriel got the second sword. A guy literally hands her the sword! And I don't really keep up too much with what other people have to say, but after watching this, I bet Shadiversity passed a stone in frustration with how fucking awful this scene is. Like I was reliving the brawl at the end of The Last Jedi. God, this show assassinates characters like sharks picking off members of the USS Indianapolis. Most of the cast are probably hoping to wade by, praying they aren't picked off by the script, waiting for that fat PBY called the end of the season to carry them to safety in the eyes of the internet. And the writers must think of us as children to believe that anything they've written has a modicum of intelligence behind it. For example, take the reveal that Adar is not in fact Sauron. The way it was written comes off as though it was supposed to be some big reveal halfway through the season, when in reality, Sherlock Holmes in a vegetative state could have figured this one out. This show has nothing going for it, which was obvious from the start, but I think I was wrong. I don't think this show will attempt to pick itself up until episodes 7 or 8, if at all. We still have the Battle of Tirith to suffer through, and Durin the Dim will probably dig deep enough to release the Balrog, which probably won't happen until episodes 6 or 7 itself. And it'll probably end on some sort of cliffhanger hinting at or straight up revealing that Abercrombie is Sauron. And we'll have to continue to endure the corporate media blowing smoke up our asses as they continue to throw themselves on the sword of narrative. Unlike them though, I'll be here to explain to you why it sucks and not dance around the subject like a spineless coward. I just have to maintain my sanity long enough to see it through because this show is like carrying a cross made out of lead and I'm going to bitch about it the whole way. Now, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.